tell her, you can tell her anything. She's a real good listener. You can tell her anything.
Yo, what's up? It's your girl, Father Longlegs. You know me, Daddy T. This is You Can Tell Me Anything, the podcast where comedians confess something they want to get off their chest. I'm very excited for my guest today. Old friend all the way from New York City. He used to coach me in improv. He's done so many things. But new faces just for laughs. I remember watching your one-man show, Guys You Love to Hate, back in the day. And now I feel like you're like on every commercial I've ever seen. Give it up for Alan Starzinski.
Hello.
Hello. And you have a new Clubhouse show right now for those exclusive members of Clubhouse called Comedy about sex and cum. Can you explain it again? Sorry.
It's a comedy sex advice show. It's every Wednesday at 6 p.m.
Gotcha. I love it. I love a good sex pun. Well, Alan, thank you for being here. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
I want to start with a good confession because I like to do that just to have like a little positive note to start on. So, Alan, is there something good you wanna confess?
Is there something good that I want to confess?
Just like a positive thing, humble brag.
Yeah.
Anything.
Oh, I'm obsessed with those, like, those meal kits.
Oh,
where
like
they're here's all the ingredients.
Like Blue Apron?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Like those things. I've not used Blue Apron yet because they're pricier.
Gotcha.
But it's got me into cooking, and I really like it.
What have you been making? Anything like cool, like highlights, like you're like, ooh, I didn't think I would make that, but then, like sometimes things sound hard and then you do it and you're like, I did that.
You know what? There's so many different things.
Gotcha.
Like the thing that I have coming up is like a chicken katsu with garlic rice and a cucumber salad, which I'm pretty excited to make.
That sounds really good.
I made a truffle penne, a truffle Alfredo penne, and it was amazing. It was so good.
I've never gotten into the subscription boxes. I've done them with friends before, but cooking has always been like a weird love-hate thing. Like when I enjoy cooking for friends. When I cook for myself, it's a whole different thing. Like I do it quickly. I blandly, like not because I like bland foods, but because I like to save time. I'm literally just like, where can I shave time off? Well, I'll eat something bland, and I know it's bland, but it's easy. And then when I cook for friends, I'm like, all right, I gotta prep it. I get even like centerpieces sometimes if I'm having friends over. I mean, RIP having friends over, but back in the day, it's a whole different part of my brain that I use when I'm like, I go into host party mode, and when I cook for myself, I go into like, how can I do this the quickest possible way and not suffer?
Well, I think like one of the big tricks is to cook for multiple meals.
Yeah, smart.
Because that's what the thing is like they give you, it's 2 meals. You're cooking for 2 every time you do it. So even if you don't have somebody to share with, it's like your lunch the next day or your dinner the next day or your dinner that night if you're making it lunch,
Smart. Oh, God, cool. Now you're making me hungry, and I'm like going to do groceries today, which is the kind of thing whenever I do groceries hungry, I'm always like, I usually buy the same thing all the time, but I feel like every once in a while I'm like, maybe I'll try this new vegetable, and then it sits in my fridge because I don't know what to do with it. So this time I'm like, maybe I'll get a recipe.
Well, that's the cool thing with those boxes, that they just give you enough ingredients for that thing. So you're not like buying a shitload of green onions that you're going to use for one thing.
Gotcha.
And
that does happen a lot. Green onions come in bulk. They're pretty cheap.
Green onions come in too many for whatever you need them for.
Truly. That, like, yeah, a lot of the Chinese vegetables are like that. Like bok choy, anything, when I get it at Ranch 99, I'm like, I want this, but I want like a little bit of it. And it's like a huge head of lettuce. And you're like, what the fuck is this? I feel like someone should sponsor me. You guys, Blue Apron or whatever out there, look, sponsor me. I'm already giving you free advertising. But Alan, this is podcast kind of based on like I started going to therapy late in life and I really love it because just I mean you know me, but I like to talk about myself, but also it feels good to have like people to connect with and talk to. So that's sort of where the inspiration came from, and also a way to talk to my funny friends. So I like to ask like everybody like what's your sort of experience with therapy, and or I guess if you don't go to therapy, like what do you do to sort of like do you have a confidant or talk through sort of like emotions, and how do you process your day-to-day mental health?
So my first brush with therapy was when I was a kid. I went to a therapist because I didn't have friends. And I was like, Mom, I want to go to a therapist.
Oh,
I
you
don't have
asked.
any friends.
How did you find out
Yeah.
about, was it something that you saw on TV?
Film and TV.
Oh,
Yeah.
gotcha. Oh, cool. How did she respond?
But she was like, okay. But because I was very medicated as a kid, I was on Ritalin until about from like kindergarten to 8th grade.
Gotcha.
So I was either super rambunctious or kind of muted, you know, when there's like cloud of kind of like fuzzy memory when during that time, and I do not know how it affected me in the long term, but
gotcha.
It's what you think is the best at the time. Like I was so hyperactive. It was wild.
I think that's like it's interesting because I have ADHD, and I wasn't diagnosed as an adult, so I have a totally different experience. A lot of people, it's pretty common to have had a diagnosis as a kid. So I've talked to people with experiences like that, and it seems like I think what's so different is your brain's just growing really fast as a child. So even if at the time it was diagnosed, like who knows, if it was the right thing, it's so hard to get the dosage right because you're literally growing like every day. So that's interesting that so many kids get diagnosed, and as an adult it's so much harder. When I feel, since I got my diagnosis as an adult, it's been easier for me to manage, but I don't think it's very common for, like, people assume if you've made it this long, like you're fine, which is I think a little detrimental to a lot of people who may have a much easier way out as an adult to like treat things,
Yeah. I mean, I kind of don't think, I don't think kids really should be on that. But that's because for me in particular, I think that if I had found something that I really latched onto, the problem was like I would like get signed up for karate or get signed up for soccer, and it just couldn't keep my attention.
Yeah.
I would like go off and do something else, or even Boy Scouts couldn't keep my attention.
Do you remember, I mean, I don't know how much you remember, but do you remember if it was like you weren't connecting to the people in it and that kind of lost your interest, or were you just genuinely like very easily just like lost your flame for things?
Unless I got like attention, I was like, what's that?
Gotcha.
And then if I saw somebody else getting attention, I was like, I mean, it's not dissimilar to how I am now, but like, hey, either I'm getting the attention or I'm walking away.
So you were clear about what you wanted in a way that the adults didn't see. Like, in a way, you were very consistent.
Yeah.
So you went to therapy, or your mom took you after you asked?
Yeah. And it's so here's the interesting thing about it is that I was on it, and I like had friends, but it also kind of made me, I don't want to say like sociopathic, but it made me kind of took some emotions away from me when I was on it.
Gotcha.
'Cause I was like more focused, but it was like, here's this thing. I really knew how to insult somebody to a place that they were like, whoa.
Were you a bully?
No. At least I don't think so. I was bullied by like neighborhood kids, but that's because they would, make fun of somebody, and then I would hit them back, or I would just be annoying. And by hit them back, but I mean like insult them back, or
like stick up for
be kind of annoying
people.
And I noticed from the summer of 8th grade or 7th grade into 8th grade that I wasn't on the Ritalin over the summer at a summer camp.
On your own accord? Or
she was like, well, we're not going to do it. I was like, okay. And then I was way more social. I had way more friends. It was like a lot easier for me to connect with people and stuff. So then I told my mom, I was like, I'm not going to take this anymore. And she was like, all right. And then I stopped, and it was night and day. Like, maybe my grades definitely hurt. I won't deny that, but
that's also a fallacy that it's so directly correlated to grades. I mean, yes, of course your focus and attention will affect it, but that's one of the reasons I think some kids don't get diagnosed. Like, I got good grades and I was always struggling with focus, but because of that I never was flagged for attention deficit. But when I look back, it's like all the signs were there, but it just, grades wise, I was doing fine. I just put in a lot of extra effort and it was hard, if that makes sense. Like, I think it could have been, I think that we're on this weird binary scale where we're like, this is the shortcut sign, and then if we don't see the sign, then it's not it. And you're like, but it's not actually about smartness. It's about focus and attention and like dopamine levels. Truly, that's really what it is.
I mean,
did the therapy help? Were you able to parse out how you were feeling at that young? It sounds like you were very self-aware.
Yeah. It like kind of helped. It was also around the time when my parents got were getting like divorced. There's also a lot of sibling like rivalry between me and my sister.
Gotcha.
Which was bad. Like bad.
What's the age gap?
A year and a half.
Okay, so it was like kind of vying for attention and validation.
But there was also like a cruelty that I look back on and I'm really disgusted with. But also like a lot of my mentality as a kid, I'm kind of like, what the fuck? What little monsters? I was like, I don't know if you feel this way. Do you like look back and go, I was such a little selfish shit?
Yeah, I mean, I do it. Well, I feel like I do this constantly because I write in my diary less now as an adult, and I'm mostly in my iPhone notes. But I was constantly like writing stuff down, and some of it through ADHD, some of it I think was trauma response, but a lot of it was me trying to figure out what I could do better to improve my situation. So yeah, 100%. That was a big part of growing up, was sort of like looking for my own flaws in order to like achieve like a false, pretense of perfection. And because there's more control, it's easier to control yourself than others. So it's easier to say like, oh, I'm shitty or I'm this way, which is not to say I wasn't shitty, but I think I may have been on the extreme end of overcompensating. So, yes, I for sure was a little shit, just like everyone, but I think I overcompensated to a point where it was like, okay, you're now just being annoyingly self-deprecating. Yeah.
100%. 100%.
How do you feel as an adult now? What you're like sort of grown up and have your own, like as a child, I think therapy is always, it's tricky because I think not only are you developing, but also so many people go into it not voluntarily. And that's why it's interesting you asked to go. Like, did that match up to your expectations, like as an adult having gone to therapy, or was it very different when you were a child going?
it was different. You know, I mean, it's also different issues that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Like you said, as a child, it's all this development and like, what is the world? What are things? And as an adult, you kind of have a little bit more of a idea of what they are.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel like I'm pretty self-aware with who I am and how others feel about me and react to me. But
how do you feel about yourself? I think so much of childhood is about reacting based on other people's reaction, and a lot of adulthood is about realizing that other people don't matter as much as how you see yourself.
Oh, for sure. Like I like myself. I think that there are aspects about me that I am always trying to improve. And there are things that, I mean, this is also going to go a bit into what I'm going to talk about.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, it's a little appetizer.
Yeah. To just move away from that, because we're going to get to it. I want to talk about like therapy as an adult and some of the experiences that I've had. And I don't know if you've, I started going to therapy again.
Okay. I think I know what, yes. Okay. Wow. Yes. I'd be comfortable
I started going in New York because it was free because I had, because I'm poor and had the free person insurance. And then I also had that out here, and I started going to a therapist who I had to stop going to because she drunk DM'd me and kind of confessed that she like loved me.
I remember seeing this on social media. I forgot about it until you just said that. And that is so inappropriate. I'm sorry you went through that. And I imagine that's really, even if you know that's not the way things should be, like it does affect the way you view the experience, because it's like, you know, she did that, and that's going to, I'm sorry.
If anything, it was just like a massive inconvenience though. Cause it's like, ugh, I've already told you all my shit. But then also like I have issues with my ego already. You know this. What are you doing feeding that? Like,
but it sounds like you cut it off. Like did she apologize? Like how did like, it seems like she crossed a huge boundary and then she just doubled down, or was she like, oh shit, I really fucked up?
Oh, I ghosted her.
Yeah. And she didn't. Wow.
She didn't follow up. Well, think about it.
No, of course. From your end, you've done nothing wrong, but from her end, I'm like, I hope she's fixing her habits in this profession. Like that really. Feels...
Yeah, I mean, she's. I can't ruin somebody's career. Especially somebody who's like a mom. This person was a mom. So I'm not going to explode her life for like a horny mistake she made.
Well, that's not nice of you to say it that way. I think the other way sometimes I frame things, like, because I also feel like, for me, it's like I don't like the idea of like justice or revenge in your own hands. But if it's like, oh, if there there was irreparable harm or something, like it is your right to seek that. But I understand what you mean about like, because in the long run, most of the time when people have habits like that, they are pretty self-destructive, as you can infer. So even if you aren't the one to report her, like she will ultimately need to fix that, or it will blow up in her face. And so knowing that about people, it tends to be like, okay, like I don't want to spend time to like make this my problem. I'm going to do my best to set my boundary and be safe. And then, and then you move on and continue being safe and hoping that she figures it out. But I think that people learn on their own time, if not by others,
Well, I also can't, like, I'm also an extremely flirty person. So there's part of me that's like, I didn't not welcome this
Well,
and
there's no reason. Like, the relationship is clear when you go into that, and
you're absolutely right.
yeah. And if, I mean, like, let's say, like, let's go super, like, hypothetical in the event, right? Because you hear that people fall in love and whatever and get married. Okay. If it was one of those situations, which I still feel like, I don't know, because it still feels like the dynamic already is, that doesn't feel appropriate. But let's say it was one of those, like, one in a lifetime. In that case, the responsible thing to do would have been for her to stop that relationship before. Like, if there truly was this mutual flirtation that was like,
I wasn't saying it was mutual.
No, I know. I'm just saying, like,
yeah.
to try to ease the because that feeling of like, what did I do? What could I have done? I think 100%. No matter how much you flirted with her or whatever, it's not any of your responsibility, because that is you went in seeking the confidence of a therapist and nothing else. And if she had any other idea, she could have set her boundary and say, hey, I feel that you are doing this, and then you could have clarified together. But it doesn't sound like she did that, so I would not blame yourself at all.
Yeah, I mean, she was also trashed, and it was like DM. Like, I know that I'm justifying this, and it is wrong. It's totally wrong. But I am kind of giving her a mulligan on this one, you know? And she like helped me through a really rough time with this like abusive woman that I had something with.
But good behavior does not negate bad behavior. I mean, I know you know this, but it's interesting because I think I've had these similar. The only reason I'm breaking it apart so much is I've had similar thought sequences in my own head before, you know. And I don't know if this is true for you, but for me, sometimes when I'm in those situations, I'll almost tell myself, like, it's actually easier for me to think like I can handle it, it's not that bad, and here's what I'll do to walk away, because the other option, like, the world gives us this binary, right? The other option is to be like, something horrible happened and I now have to feel like a victim, and I also don't want that. And I do think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, where it's like I can acknowledge that, like, it was a bad thing, whether it affected me in a, you know, like, maybe it's lucky that it didn't affect you that much, but that doesn't matter because she was the one that did something, and, you know, you could have reacted totally differently. And then you can also be, I like to say, like, because when I'm like, I feel like I don't want to be a victim and powerless, like a survivor or a warrior. Like, you left a battle that didn't go your way, and then you're like, on to the next. And that helps me sometimes get through that, instead of being like, they're fine, because I think you can be fine, but they don't have to be fine for you to be fine, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I also look at it as like, what a fun parting gift. Like, I'd been with her for a year ago. I have a fucking great story now.
Oh, gosh.
And in my mind, I think that it is a goal to leave our life with as many stories as we possibly can. And, you know, I got one out of that, you know.
I guess it could have been, yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. Let's take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll get your confession.
All right.
And we're back. Alan, the time has come. I would like to know, is there anything you would like to tell me?
Yeah. I don't necessarily know if I'm real.
Ooh. Oh, now you're speaking my language.
I knew it.
Okay.
I knew
Elaborate.
it.
Are we talking physically real? Are we talking you think everything's in your head? Or are we thinking like simulation situation? Like,
no, I'm not talking simulation. I'm talking about like what makes up me personality wise. And I guess it might just be what a personality is that you've taken bits and pieces that you've liked from things and you've allowed those to kind of build who you are. It's something I noticed, like when I would watch a movie or a TV show or read a book or something
Mm-hmm.
when I was a kid, I would take on attributes of characters
Mm-hmm.
that I admired and that I like really loved, or even friends. I had
Yeah.
a friend in high school that I started talking like because I really liked his cadence. And
Well, okay,
You know?
as a kid, okay, this is interesting because I think what you're describing, and I might not be 100% correct because I'm not, again, I'm a comedian and this is me saying thoughts. So please, if this sounds like it's wrong, it's probably wrong. But it sounds like what you're describing is mirroring, which is a thing that children do and supposedly do as they grow older to learn how to like kind of navigate society. And a lot of it happens through, baby times when you're looking at your parents, you mirror so you understand emotions. But as you get older, and I think it's become harder to self-regulate emotions in this very like confusing world, not because of like confusing in a like I'm not saying this like in a PC sense. I mean confusing because the cues are all off and the communication cues are all off. So I don't think we all learn the same like rules, right? And so it is actually natural for you to look at cues in pop culture or people you admire to mirror. And I think sometimes it can go to an extreme. Like when I was younger, I also like felt like a loss of identity. So I would similarly try to mirror to a fault like the popular girls. But I think it comes from the innate instinct to mirror your tribe. But when the tribe is so big, you're just like searching, and sometimes it can become extreme. It sounds like that's what you're describing because it doesn't sound like you were doing it in a mocking way. But
No.
I'm curious if people reacted in a way that felt like, were people uncomfortable with it? Or did people call you out?
I mean, yeah, you're always going to get that idea that somebody's going to call you out, of that kind of imposter syndrome type thing.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it is this mirroring, but I still will do it to this day. Like if I see I'm like, oh, I really like
Yeah.
the way that this person's carrying themselves. I'm going to try to do it. Or even my laugh. My laugh has changed throughout the years. And I also don't know.
But your
because
laugh is so distinct. I feel like I always recognize it in a dark UCB theater.
Yes, but I feel like it also is kind of like Neil Casey's. I feel like there's bits of Neil, who was a teacher of mine and a friend and an amazing comedian. But I feel like, I was like, I like that, and I kind of had it shift a little bit.
In your head, sorry, okay. I have a question after you finish that I'm curious about.
Yes, totally. And I also remember there was this kid, of an instance of when this happened. There was this kid, Brooks Stop, that I did like all of school together. But his laugh became Nelson Muntz's laugh from The Simpsons. Like the ha.
Like he just started doing it.
He started doing it, and then it just became his actual laugh. Yeah.
Well, this is so interesting because, and I'm trying to keep it on the micro level because you know how I am. As soon as you mention ideas that connect to other ideas, I'm immediately like in space and the stars. So I'm going to rein it in from a very, very micro level. My first question hearing this is, what do you hear in your head? Like, do you have like your own, like your subconscious voice? Does it change, or is it like, do you have a inner voice, and what does that kind of sound like? Can you describe it?
So I don't really know, because, and this goes on to this as well, is that I, from a very young age, used to do voices and accents and stuff, and I was able to like, I'm good at accents now because I've been doing it since I was a child, just emulating these things that I would hear on TV, to the point where I wonder if my actual voice is my own, if this is what my vocal cords are supposed to be doing naturally, or if they were pushed into this direction.
What do you consider, because you keep saying this idea of, and I don't know the answer. This is just to push the conversation, so none of this is meant as a right or wrong, but you keep saying, or you said it a few times, this idea of like real or not being the true authentic. So I'm curious to you, outside of yourself, what would you define, like, do you have examples of your life of people you think are authentic? Like, what do you define as this like real true self? Like, how do you know if you've achieved it? Like, do you have people in your life that you're like, that's true, that's real?
I guess maybe to, I guess maybe yes and no. I mean, there are non-spoken social contracts that we have, like
what? I mean,
and that people aren't necessarily going to. I'll give an example. Lies. There is this when somebody is lying to you, you generally know that they're lying to you.
Yeah.
I'd say 80% of the time when somebody is lying to you, you know that they are lying to you. And there is just there's this social contract that we have all agreed to, that when somebody is telling you something, it's the truth. They are being honest with us, and we don't call them out unless we have that proof, or the suspicion just eats us up so much that we're like, hey, I think this kind of thing. Which, I don't adhere to that social contract a lot.
I don't know that that's a social contract, though, because especially if you're describing growing up with ADHD, that the idea of holding on to rules is pretty common in, I know I'm sure not everyone has this, but I definitely can relate. And I think it's a thing I see as a symptom of ADHD, because we're trying to understand the rules that feel like they're changing to us, because our literal system is changing. So the receptors change. And I think the lie thing is something that is not, I don't know. It sounds to me that's more of like a boundary, or how to actually set boundaries. And we may have had a harder time developing that skill because of like our emotional regulation. Whereas most people, I guess, if someone's lying, if you're like, I don't know, if you're like healthy and able to discern, then a lot of people, I think, would just either walk away or be like, your word's not meaningful to me. In a way where
I do that.
No, I know, but I'm saying that I don't know that that's so socially unacceptable, as you say. It may be that people who blow up in your face are trying to manipulate you into thinking that you're in the wrong. But
that's it. But people, what I'm trying to say is that people kind of would rather not deal with the confrontation.
Yes, because it makes them feel that if in case there's a doubt that the person's not lying, that they're gonna seem mistrustful.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing as why people are afraid to be like, oh, I think that's Carla. I think that's Carla over there, and they don't want to like go, hey Carla, in case it's not them.
Yeah.
Or that thing of like, fuck, I forgot this person's name.
Yeah.
I've met them like 5 times. I forget what their name is. Instead of just going, hey, I'm a bad person. I know that we've talked before, but sometimes names escape me. And it's not that I don't think that you're important or anything. It's just like it fucking happens.
You're describing almost more truth, which I think is so interesting, because in a way, I think that everyone does wear sort of like a social mask. And it's usually, like you said, it's like there's a level of politeness, but hopefully your mask isn't so fake that it's a different person. And it sounds like maybe
we should all be wearing masks, right?
Right, true.
We should all be
wearing masks, double up the mask, wash your hands.
Double up your social masks.
But it does feel like maybe the veil between your inner self and the mask is much thinner than others, and maybe what you're picking up on is other people have a thick mask. They've got that sounds like something on a dating app, like I'm a thick mask looking for my thin mask, my thin femme. But the I guess, for lack of better words, the thicker mask for other people that they wear for protection or whatever, you sense as they're being their true selves, because they're kind of hiding their true selves. So you might feel like you're kind of like all out there and less protected. I don't know if that rings true. And it's okay if it doesn't. I'm just like kind of like trying to, it's interesting to me. This is super interesting because I find that the more I get comfortable with my true self, like my healing my trauma, the less I want to adhere to those social rules that don't benefit me or society. I'm not talking about just me, like society, right? Liars, enabling liars to me does not benefit others except for the liar. So to me, that's a situation I'd rather make a liar mad than to make them feel that they're invincible and continue lying. So I feel that what you're describing is not necessarily a negative thing, but I don't know. How do you feel about what I'm saying?
I'm not necessarily saying that it's a negative thing either. And when I say, am I real and the authentic self, it's like, I guess it's like,
who are you, Alan?
What is the difference of somebody who's like developing their own thing, and kind of going the flow of like, of interests and stuff, other than taking composites of what other people's interests are, or are those even different? Are those or are they the same? Manipulating your voice to kind of sound like that, because I'd say that my voice is probably lower than what most people actually hear, because I'm trying to cut through to be heard, because I didn't feel like I was heard as a kid.
But those are layers of your personality that have become true. Well, okay. Have you ever looked at like, what about relatives? Like, do you find similarities in your mannerisms? Because I would say not that genetics necessarily are everything, but that might be, like if you have a voice or something that's similar to relative, then I feel that there's more indication that it's not completely out of nowhere,
Yes, but like more of maybe my female relatives, because I had more of a feminine
influence,
caretakers. Like that, even my house, like it was my mom, my sister, even the dog and cat were female. So
one day you're just like barking, you're like, this is not my real voice. It's
and I'm thinking that when I look back at like personality wise of those that were like close to me, were my aunt, my Aunt Marty, my mom, and I had a stepdad for like 2 years who recently just passed. But I realized that there are attributes of him that I did take on that have become a part of me. And it's interesting because if there are bits that you like about somebody and you take that into yourself, it is like they have not passed. They're still within you. That's, and then you're going to make, I mean, it's been heard before, but that carries on until things don't exist anymore, until it's all consumed by a black hole.
You're almost describing like circumventing long-term evolution by just actively evolving. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're incorporating like these filters kind of like let's talk computers, right? Like, instead of just going in and changing the source code, you're kind of downloading the software and the apps of the stuff you like and taking what you enjoy. And of course, like, I could see, I'm not saying it's like foolproof. I could see like someone being like, stop doing my voice or whatever. But in the long run, your intention is to create a version of yourself that has all these positive attributes, which is honestly, like, I think a very noble intention. Whereas so many people are like, well, this is how I am and I've always been stubborn, therefore I'll never stop being stubborn, which feels more like resistant to change. So maybe you're just changing so fast, it feels like you don't know who you are. I don't know.
Maybe.
My question to you would be, have you developed twofold. Have you ever changed something that you liked it, so you picked it up or whatever, and then it did, and then based on the reaction of others, you then go, oh no, like you changed how you felt about it based on the reaction of others as opposed to just what you felt.
Yeah, I'll give you an example of junior year of high school.
Mm-hmm.
I got this, like, I guess my persona, you could refer to it as Alan fucking Starzinski. Like,
Okay, yeah.
why? Because somebody go, like, why did you do that? I go, because I'm Alan fucking Starzinski. That's why. Like
Okay.
that. And it had such a negative reaction with my friends. And I got called out by it. And I was like, cool, I need to keep that in check. And then that kind of rose again. I almost got kicked off of my indie improv team when I was doing improv. And they sat me down and they talked to me. And I was like, great. Okay, I need to adjust how I am. And I'm so fucking grateful for that.
But did you
truly
feel like
am.
what that sounds? Okay, the first one sounds more like, yeah, kids just being like, don't do this, and you're like, I will just surface, not do this. The second one sounds more like as a team, and I mean, just from the basic explanation, it sounds like people who maybe like you, that respect and trust you, who want you to be on the team and are trying to work with you. That feels less like saying like don't be yourself and more like, like it hurts us when you do this, but we like you, so maybe we can. I don't know if that was the feeling, but I kind of, those two feel slightly different to me, because I'm guessing like in one version they're your friends already trying to help, and in another maybe they were people you're trying to get approval from, right? Does that feel true?
Yes, and I'm constantly trying to get approval. I'm constantly trying to get approval, but also not being like necessary for me. It's like I don't need it, but I want it. I want this. Like if I think specifically about UCB, I'm like, I had already achieved this thing, but I still want it. I want to have it again. I want to.
Sure.
That's why I would like keep auditioning for Herald teams years after being cut. And I'm like, I already achieved this top thing, but I'm like, I still want it. I want daddy's kind of approval there.
I'm so curious how you would do in like a sensory deprivation chamber. Have you ever done one of those? Just like when you're alone with nothing around to mirror off of, like, well, because you talk about not feeling yourself. And I'll say, obviously I don't know and I'm not a doctor, but for my basic understanding of what you're saying and also being your friend, I feel like you have a strong personality and that is you. And it's not meant to be a prison. It's like you can change. And I think that most people have that in a way that even if you don't see it, like, hopefully that makes you feel comfortable. Like you're not just a bunch of bones you're holding together with your thoughts. Like if you breathe and let go, even if you let go of a lap or this or that, you would still be Alan and you would still be you and you would have all the knowledge you have. But I wonder if you've ever felt like, have you ever like felt truly just like in your skin and you're not thinking about how you're being perceived? Like when have you felt the most, like just like comfortable as yourself?
I'm not thinking about how I'm being perceived when I'm doing stuff.
Or
when
like
I'm out and I'm being
the fragments
social.
of like having bits of other people's personalities. Have you ever just like felt like a whole you as opposed to like this and that puzzle pieces?
Yeah, when I'm not like thinking, when I'm not having like contemplative thoughts and like analyzing what we are.
Yeah.
And I'm just existing in the day. If I'm out and being around people and things, I'm not really cognizant of what I am to be me. I'm just being me. It's why I had more mental health issues in LA than I did in New York, because in New York you don't have time
to be sad. No, you do.
to essentially like live, because you're constantly just surviving. And here you have
waiting for the L train.
Yeah. You're just like, what's what is me? What's going on? Kind of.
How do you feel? Okay, because I know you love a dance party, so now I'm curious because this is something for me when I dance. I do get very insecure, especially growing up. I've gotten better now, but I used to always think about like, oh, you know, where are my arms? What am I doing? And I would think about that, except for when I dance. When I dance, I'm very much like in my body. I'm here and I'm present, and that's when it all goes away. I know you love dance parties, so I'm curious. Like, do you have that experience, or when you're dancing, are you thinking about like, now I will dance like this, or do you like let loose and you're like here and I'm Alan?
I'm never more uncomfortable than when I'm dancing.
Okay.
Genuinely.
Okay.
It is like the one thing. It is like
But you love dance
like
parties. I feel like I always run it. Well, back in the day when we were allowed to go to dance parties.
Yeah. No, I do like them, but I'm also usually drunk or high. And then when that happens, something turns off. When I'm like, cool,
when you're
I
drunk
can
or
kind of
high,
relax.
that's
like,
the most not you. But then that's the one you don't have to think that you're not being you, because it literally is altering you.
It is, but it's also it's breaking down like barriers that you self-imposed and that you and that like you can question about yourself, and you know, also put up new ones. But it also there's this thing where it's just like I can just feel the fucking music. I don't know.
Yeah.
I can sing in front of people and I don't have a fucking problem. I can talk in front of people, comedy, all that other stuff. But like there's something about dancing that will make me feel kind of foolish and like a little bashful. And I know that it's something that I have to fucking get over, because I'm always like, if you're scared of this thing that has literally no repercussions to it, and if somebody's like making fun of you, like if somebody's making fun of you for being a bad dancer, it's like, fuck them. Who cares? You're just enjoying yourself and feeling this.
Yeah.
It's something I tried to do. I was doing these like little dance videos at the beginning of quarantine, like just in my just like playing a song and putting it in my stories. And it was like a fun, stupid thing. But yeah, it is something I'm actively trying to kind of get over.
It's so interesting. I mean, I don't think that's uncommon. A lot of people, I think I like to dance because when I was very young, like I think me and my sister had each other. So when we were dancing, you know, kids love to dance, but we never developed that like that awkward stage of embarrassment that you get in your teens because we were around each other. I think we skipped over that. But I think that natural inclination, that feeling when you're high and just feel the music, I think that is how most people are deep down. And then like the shame is built later. So it's really interesting because I wouldn't have pegged you for being embarrassed to dance. But it's also not uncommon. So it's not something like you necessarily have to work on unless you want to. But I think there's nothing wrong with being bashful. It's just super interesting because I know you're very like not a shy person.
You know what I think it is too? It is about like dancing with people that you don't know. If I'm with people that I know, I'm fine. I'm comfortable. I can do it. Dancing with people that I don't know, because I don't want to feel like I'm interrupting what they're doing or burdening. And it even comes to like when you're single and dating and being like, oh, I want to go dance with this person. And it feels like there is it feels like you are it's a fear of rejection of like presenting yourself and being like, hey, I'm dancing. It's literally the most like primordial kind of like animal brain, like I am presenting to you.
Yeah.
Do you accept kind of thing? Here I am. There's a vulnerability to it.
Yeah.
That is way deeper than anything else, I think.
Interesting, because I think that okay, I just thought of something. I don't know if this resonates, but I understand that vulnerability. now, because I've tried to escape it so many times and I can't, and it blows up my face, I actively present it first, because then I'm like, hurt me now and I'll know. And then my body learns, but that's the only way my body can learn, because I've literally, I mean, you know, my 20s stories, which we won't get into now, but whenever I've tried to mask any truth, it just blows up, generally in terms of feelings. But it's interesting you say that, because the idea of taking on characteristics of other people, I think we all do, but we don't always assign them to people. Like, I'm sure if I broke it down, I could find, oh, this is from this, but I don't think of it that way, like that I'm putting on little armors. But if you actively remember, like, this I took from my friend Steve, and this is the blah, 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 then when you present, in a way, you're kind of like wearing other people's as your armor, so that if you get rejected, is there feeling that you're like not totally being rejected, because you're like, well, they rejected Steve's laugh, and they rejected Anna's joke, and they rejected blah blah, you know? Does that mean
100%, because it wasn't, it's that same mentality of people not giving something their all, because if they gave it their all and they failed, then they're a failure. And if they didn't give it their all and they failed, it's not their fault, because they didn't give it their all. Where I've come to this place of being like, you gotta give all of it, because if you fail, then you've got a fucking great gift of learning from that.
Yes, I love that, because that literally is how, I mean, it's funny that we think all these other industries are exempt from it, but then we look at athletes and we're just like, yeah, like nobody, even the best player, like it's impossible to never lose. And if you've never lost a game, everyone would know you're not a good player, because either you don't have enough experience, or you've only ever played people you know you can beat. But if you always,
like Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah, but I mean, like, and I guess that's a little different too with individual sports, but I'm talking about like even like basketball, whatever. You can be so good, but it's the idea to actually become better is to play people who are on par with you. And then if you lose, to keep training and then beat them, because that's a sign of progress. Yeah. But if you never lose, then you just are just repeating your first game over and over, right? So I love that, because that's how I view growth as well. Like, not just in like comedy and, you know, but everything, like breakups, whatever. I think of it as like, instead of being sad, I process the feeling in my body and I go, okay, so now my body knows what this feels like. So now that won't ever happen again, because I've learned, and now I know like how to beat this level. I don't know. It's very interesting. Yeah, you're really like lighting up different parts of my brain, and I'm like, I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense, because I'm having lots of thoughts.
Same here. I'm like, have we gone linear, or has this gone all Jeremy Bearimy?
No, it makes sense. Well, okay, I really like this confession. I have a fun game I wanted to end on, but I want to give you a chance to any final thoughts regarding the confession, if you have anything to add. But I feel like we've covered so much. It's super interesting. I think a lot of people will relate to parts of it for sure.
Well, here's like another thing that I wanted to bring up, that I almost presented as the confession, but I also think that it maybe ties into this as well, of being like, I had a thing that I talked to Will Hines had like brought this up, and I go, that's interesting. I had this same thought when I was a kid, and maybe others did. Like, film and TV and books teach us all, like, you're special, you're an individual. But sometimes you take that a little bit too far. And I had this thing that I could only dub as chrono-narcissism, where I would think that people would come into my life from the future to push me in different directions. Like, as a kid being like, saying this, like, hey, you should pick up the guitar, being like, oh yeah, I should. Oh my gosh. What if this person was saying this because me learning the guitar is going to save the world in the future? I'd never learned the guitar, but that's just an example.
This ties in so well to the game that I'm really excited for us to get to. But I want to respond to that. I think that, how old were you when you thought this? Like, were you young or older?
Like 13, 14. I also I was waiting for puberty, because I thought, this is when mutants get their power. I'm going to be a fucking X-Men kind of thing.
Okay. Well,
legitimately, if somebody wanted to kidnap me, all they would have to do is be like, I'm here to train you
Oh God.
to save the world. Not kidding. I would have been like, fuck, it's happening. It's happening.
Wow. Well, it's interesting because I think at that age it is you're making sense of the world. I would say if you're like in your 20s or 30s and still thinking that in a way that's distracting from relationships, that like it's fun to have an imagination, but that's where, you know, we have our outlets. But if you're like, you know, fucking up at work or whatever because you're like, I'm a mutant, then I would be concerned. But I think as a teenager, like we get confused because we hear as an adult like this is crazy, but it's actually not crazy to think that as a kid. Like you said, so many people have had things like that. I've had things when I was really young. I thought I was like a prophet, like, and I saw the beginning of the universe as this big red ball that talked to me. It's very normal because we are trying to fill in the big questions that adults don't know with our own answers. That being said, I think this is super interesting because I literally, I'm just going to give this one away because, okay, actually, no, I don't want. It's literally what you described is very directly tied into one of these questions for the game. So I kind of want to tell you it. Okay. The game is kind of silly. It's because we talked about this on Clubhouse, but you used to coach me in improv. And so and then I also write a lot of crazy thoughts in my iPhone notes and then the other day we were talking on Clubhouse and you were like, what are you talking about, Teresa? So I realized like what I always have had an issue is with like thinking micro of relaying thoughts to people because I quickly get too big. So I wanted to, this is called Coach My Notes, and I was going to read you like a line from different iPhone notes of like my bonkers thoughts I write to myself and see if you can like explain them in a way that makes sense. But this one I'll just do as an example because it basically you already described it. This one I wrote in September 24th, 2020. It says, act in the present with everything you know to be true about the past, with everything you want to be true about the future. And it's kind of the flip side of what you were describing of chrononarcissism, but instead in my version, I'm the time traveler who came back and I get to make the future the version I want. And so it's like anytime I want, like if there's a war or whatever, and I'm like, I can't be the hero. I'm like, well, what if I was sent from the future to make sure this war doesn't happen? So then I always do the thing that I think is the most extreme, but will get me and the world I live in where I want it to go, which is similar to what you're talking about. So I don't know. There might be something to that, not the physical reality of that, but the idea that thought is in our head genetically. Like there might be something to that evolutionarily.
There was this TV show I remember about like a 30-something-year-old guy who went back into his 16-year-old body. And he was like, I gotta live everything up. Huh? That is a Zac Efron movie. But this was a TV show before the Zac Efron movie. It did not last. It lasted a season, if that, maybe even half a season. But I remember really liking it.
Yeah.
And thinking about, oh man, if I had that, and I think now like, oh man, if I had that, please. Just in high school, I the confidence that one would have.
But where do you learn your confidence, right? It's from those experiences. I think that's the loop. But if you think about that now as an adult, knowing what you would go back and do differently and all the times you weren't confident or whatever, and apply that to now and imagine you did come back, it works the same way. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
You start rewarding yourself over time. As a kid, it's quite hard because you'll probably find yourself embarrassed much more. But as an adult, you probably can handle embarrassment more.
Oh, embarrassment. I realized something, and this was when with dating, that the only person that can make you feel embarrassed is you. You're, and it was like a thing that I then took into teaching with improv, is that you're the only person that can make you feel ashamed and embarrassed and afraid others can try to influence those things.
Yeah.
But you have complete control over
True.
what your emotions and reactions are to it.
I feel like you literally, I don't know if you're psychic, but you've already described like 2 of my notes. Okay, let's just keep going because I feel like you're just gonna nail these.
I am.
You're really good at this. Okay. January.
Someone came from the future to
Yes,
tell
you came
me
from the future. January 20th, 2021. Success is knowing the world will deliver all consequences for your actions. Does this make
that
sense,
seems
first
more
of all?
ominous. Like, what a weird success is.
Yeah, it's supposed to sound
consequences for you.
ominous, but I'm curious if you can decipher it back to me. Or how would you explain? I could explain this to you, but I'm curious what it means to you.
The future success is, repeat it again.
Success is knowing the world will deliver all consequences for your actions.
Success is knowing the world.
But you're onto something. It does sound ominous. Why does it sound ominous?
Because of the word consequences.
Yeah. So
because you don't know, you do not associate consequences with a positive thing because nobody has your entire life. Like,
yeah.
Well, here are the consequences. Like, well, you ate too much food and the consequences for that you have a tummy ache. But nobody's like, you worked really hard and the consequences for that were you got an A on the test.
Yeah.
Like, it's never presented as a good thing when it very much can be.
Yeah, I like that. That is kind of where I was coming from, is the idea that justice isn't something I need to serve others, but also something that I need to serve myself. So if you're always acting where you're not taking too much, you're literally, you get what you deserve. That sounds like it's bad. That's what people say. But if you're doing everything that you can to get the best result, and then trusting at some point the world will give you those results, that's where I mean, because then the word consequence doesn't scare me, because I'm like, okay, maybe something I did that deserves a bad consequence will come my way, but even more so all the good stuff will come in a way that makes me feel very safe, thinking about everything as like, I'm not going to skim or cheat at all because it'll all come back. But yeah, you kind of you caught the tone right, because I was trying to present it that way. Like, we think too much of like just trying to win more, but then forgetting that like if you're cheating, it's coming back around.
Yeah. And even just thinking like consequence is always used as a warning.
If you're doing something bad.
Yeah, and when people like think about that as a warning, people are like, oh no, I'm not gonna, I'm gonna fuck up, and I'm gonna get penalized for it. It's just like kind of like, don't be a dick.
Yeah.
I remember thinking, a friend of mine's sister liked me, and I liked her too, and I didn't pursue it because I was like, oh, that's my friend's sister. I don't want to screw it up. And then I thought later, I was like, after the time had passed for it, I fucked up. I just had to not be a dick and it would have been fine. Like, it's not like, oh no, I don't want to ruin this friendship with my friend.
With my love and my kindness and my good intention. No, I know what you mean, because we're taught these things, like if it goes bad, but then you're like, then don't go bad.
Then don't let it go bad. So just don't be a prick. Don't cheat on somebody. Just be a decent human being, kind of thing.
This kind of ties into the next one. Oh, I'll do 2 more. Okay. This is actually pretty recent, from February 26th. If you have nothing, then all you have is yourself. Then you have nothing to lose. If you can never lose yourself, then you have everything. Then you are everything.
Was this pulled out of a fortune cookie?
Wow, that's racist, Alan. No, I'm just kidding.
That was the intention. That did go through my head. I go, if I say this, is that going to
No.
Like, no, it just does sound like that.
It is. I do like the wordplay, but yeah, so first of all, does it make sense? Because it makes sense to me. Like, you're now my litmus test, but like if I started an improv scene like this, I would get kicked off the stage.
If you started I just think about how, oddly enough, I used to, this kind of ties into what we talked about earlier, but of putting those shells on, is I would improvise as how I would see other people improvise, because if I did bad, that exact thing, it was like, oh, well, it wasn't me. That was John Gabris. That was me being John Gabris. Like, that wasn't me. That was me being Gil Azari kind of thing. But so it's if you have nothing to lose.
If you have nothing, then all you have is yourself. Then you have nothing to lose.
Let's break it down.
Okay.
Oh, if you have nothing,
then
all you have is yourself. If you have nothing to lose,
then you can never lose yourself. Then you have everything. Then you are everything.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's certainly. I'd have to see it written down.
No, this is good. This is when I realized that some thoughts are better left in my iPhone notes.
No.
The way I feel about it is that I feel like I'm often get abandonment issues and feel like scared of being completely alone, and not just like I've been alone at home many times and I don't feel alone. Sometimes though, you're triggered and whether you're around people or not, you just feel alone. Like you're like, I'm falling in a bottomless hole and nobody ever will get close enough to really the true me. And that feeling is really scary. It's a feeling that it's probably, past wounds, but what it feels like to me is like, I have nothing. I'll never have anything. And so that kind of came out of that, me going, if that's true, like improv, if that's true, what else is true? If I have nothing, then the only thing I have is me. But then I was like, if I am nothing, because people say you're everything, but I'm like, if I'm nothing, then I also can't lose myself. So that's how I talk myself out of this hole. It's like, if I truly am nothing, I have nothing, and I'm the worst or whatever, then I also have nothing left to lose, including myself. And people are afraid of losing themselves. But then I came back around and said, well, that also means I have everything because I'm here. So,
well, I think that there is. Nothing is nothing. It can't be something. Because nothing is the absence of something.
Yes, but do you? Yeah.
But you would say, like, if I have nothing, I'll never have nothing when I still have myself.
That's true, but I couldn't get there at first because the fear of being alone was so overwhelming. So I had to talk myself backwards into realizing that, like, I'll never be alone as long as there's an I.
Yes. And I think that condenses it around. I can never be nothing when to me I am everything.
Oh, that's better. Yeah, see, this is why you're the coach. Okay, here's the final one. It's a little bit.
Because I will say that this is another note that I would give in improv, which was when people were like afraid to look stupid on stage. I would say, why? Because you don't want to look foolish.
That's the whole fun of comedy.
You're doing improv. You are fools, and a fool that is afraid to be foolish is nothing. Yeah,
true. I like that. Okay, this one applies. We'll wrap it up with this final one, and I guess see if this makes sense to you. If not, how would you yes and it to make sense? This is from December 16, 2020. If I learned everything, I would forget it just to learn it again.
If I learned everything, I would forget it just to learn everything again. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the journey is far more desirable than the destination. It is not where you go, but it is how you get there. It's like why we watch movies.
Yeah, true.
If you go into a specific kind of genre of something, if you go into like an action movie, which I love adventure movies, I know how it's going to end. The good guy's going to persevere. And there's going to be there's going to be this conclusion. It's going to make you feel whole. What I'm interested is, how is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? Can you make me forget that ending is going to happen? And if you do that, then boom, we're great. We're gold. We're
I like that, thinking about it as a movie, because I think about this as life, but then I realize like there's no reason why I can't trust that my life will also wrap up nicely, like in the movies. And if I know that for sure, even if I don't know how it's going to happen, it does make me feel a little calmer.
Yeah. I mean, wrap up nicely. What does that mean? That you're old and somebody's wiping your ass for you kind of thing?
Well, I think it means that all of the patterns or the loose ends that I've built for myself or I've left hanging will be closed before I will see them closed at some point in a way that feels fulfilling.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, fulfillment. And that there's happiness in your life, you know?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that's all. That's, again, this is another improv note that I had heard. Ian Roberts said it in a workshop. He goes, your characters in your scenes are much like who we are in life.
Uh-huh.
We are here to pursue pleasure and avoid pain.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's like an animal instinct: pursue pleasure, avoid pain.
Mm-hmm.
And I really try to take that to heart of like, I want to pursue my own pleasure and avoid causing pain to myself and others.
Yeah.
I want to pursue pleasure for myself and for those around me, and avoid pain for myself and those around me.
That's a good philosophy. I feel like, look, I'm no doctor, but I feel like you're real, Alan. I mean, this conversation got way more real than a lot of conversations I have with people who think they're real. So I'm going to go ahead and say that I think you're real, but
Oh, good.
Okay, so, in case, hopefully I tip that scale over. But I'm really glad you shared that. This was such an interesting conversation, and I really like how we got there sort of through just like hearing your thoughts, which is, to me, the most authentic way to have a conversation. So there. Alan, where can people follow you? And if there's anything you want to plug or have people check out, can you let us know?
You could follow me at Alan Starzinski on all platforms. I know, crazy. Nobody else picked it up, huh? I mean, this will be released before this happens, but I'm currently not allowed to tweet because I cyberbullied Ted Cruz.
Oh my God. I mean, we don't have time to get into that story, but I'm sure you have material about it. So go follow Alan so you can hear more about that story. And you can follow this podcast at Tell Me Anything Pod, and follow me at Larissa T on Twitter and Instagram.